Daas Tevunos is a dialogue written by the Ramchal between a neshama and the seichel. The neshama says that I believe in the Yud Gimel Ani Mamins as articles of faith. I understand 9. 4 I don't understand, and I'm supposed to understand it from the pasuk V'yadata Yom Hashivos El Vavecha Ki Hashem Elokim Hashemayim Ma'av Tochas Eino. Yadata, you need to know these things. The 4 that he doesn't understand is Hashgacha, that God manages, supervises everything in the world. Schar v'onesh, reward and punishment. Bias Mashiach and Trias HaMesim, for the reasons that we explained. It doesn't look like the world is actually running in that direction. So we're talking about the Sefer started and told us that God created a perfectly imperfect world so we can join in and perfect the world by making the right decisions. By doing that, we perfect ourselves, and through that, we perfect the world, and that gives us an entry ticket into Olam Haba, to be Nenef Rishiv Hashrima, to bask in, quote unquote, the glory of God, the ultimate reward. The Ramchal is now talking about the Gilui HaYichud as being the purpose for all events in the world, from creation, and all events in the present, all events into the future. Everything is for one purpose. There's a common thread that runs through everything, and that's called Gilui HaYichud, revealing God's uniqueness. Revealing God's uniqueness, we already talked about, is the negative aspect. We're not allowed to talk about the positive aspect, how smart God is, how powerful He is, for the reasons we discussed. But we have an umbrella concept called Yichud. God is a Chacham, and there's no one like Him, nothing to compare Him to. God is a Gibor, there's no one to compare Him to. That Yichud, that negative statement, I don't know what it is, and I can't talk about it because it's so unique. That's the Gilui HaYichud. But now the Gilui HaYichud is going to be explained, and its importance is going to now be developed. And as I mentioned several times, the Gilui HaYichud is a core, if not the core concept that runs through so many Sforim that the Ramchal wrote. So at the bottom of page Yud Beis, and we read this, we're going to read this again, then we're going to go into a new section on page Yud Gimel. Amar HaSeichel, the Seichel explained to the Neshama, Kein vadei hu shezeu ha'inyan b'chlal, aval adayin dovet tzarech lefanim. There needs more explanations. V'umamish masha amar HaKosov, ata reis ladas ki Hashem Elokim b'shemayim ma'al v'loach mitochas, ata reis ladas ki Hashem Elokim ein od milvado. The Torah says that you were shown, and you need to know that there's no other God. That even God controls kishuf. That's, we talked about the abracadabra, and the lady that wants to turn people into frogs. She doesn't have her own separate power. She only has the power that God allows her to have. So if she says abracadabra and God doesn't want it to work, it's not going to work. The abracadabra, the salt water with the lemon juice in it, is meaningless. Any of this that works, to the extent it works, and on who it will work, is only with God's permission. When we say that God is one, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, it's not enough that in Echad we understand He's the only one that exists. There's no other God. He's the only Metzius. And even within that Echad, the idea that He's the only Muchach. There's nothing in the world that's a Muchach. Muchach means it has to be that way. There's nothing that has to be that way. Only God has to be that way. He's a Muchach. There is a God that exists. And we'll get to the Rambam in Hilchos Yisodei Torah. The Rambam explains this in depth. For our purposes, it just means that everything that is a creation by the Creator has an on-off switch. Every one of us, every plant, every bug, every human being, every animal has an on-off switch. On, you're living; off, you die. Everything that is here doesn't have to be here. As the Rambam says at the beginning of Hilchos Yisodei Torah, if the whole world ceases to exist, the whole universe ceases to exist, Mars, Jupiter, the Milky Way, it all ceases to exist, it has no effect on the existence of God. God exists whether other things exist or don't exist. And that's called a Metzius Mochrachas. He has no on-off switch. He is here, He has to be here. And there's nothing else in existence that exists that way that's a Mochrach. Everything else is here because God wants it to be here. If he didn't want it to be here, it wouldn't be here. And if nothing was here, he would still be here. That's part of the concept of echad. He's not a mukhrach. He is the mukhrach. Mukhrach meaning he's the mukhrach b'metziusai. We're going to use the word mukhrach in two ways, so we need to be careful. He is a mukhrach, meaning that he has to exist. V'she'ein boirei elohu, he's the only creator. Aval tzrichan anu lahavin od, but there's another meaning to echad. She'ein shum shalat u'moishel elohu. There's no other sovereign. There's no other boss. There's no other entity in existence that controls the world. He's the only one that manages and supervises every creature. Nothing stops him. And nothing holds back his will. And this is what we mean when we say his rule is unique, because there's nothing that gets in his way when he wants to do something. Ugamura, it's absolute. Yechida, Shlita, Yechidis, Ugamura. And that is the central now concept for us in Gilui Hayichud, to come to this understanding. The other basic understandings we know about and we work through and somehow we live with. Meaning that, I believe there's only one God, no two gods. Yeah, I believe that God doesn't have an on-off switch. I don't believe in that stuff about God died, God forbid. He's a mukhrach b'metziusai, and he's only one and not two. But how many of us have questions about, is he really running the world every second? Is he really in control? Why does it look like chaos? Maybe he's not really. Then we get into the hashgacha pratis and the hashgacha klolis. He's not watching so carefully. He is watching carefully. Maybe he's ignoring us. Maybe he's turned his back on us. Maybe it's a hester panim. We use these fancy words, hester panim. He's not looking anymore. All these kind of ideas, whatever those ideas means, are irrelevant for the moment. But there's one thing that's an absolute truth, that what I just said, that he turned away and he's not looking and he's not giving his attention. These are misnomers. These are simply words that can't be used. God is supervising all the time. And it's a shlita yechida sugamura. Vua inyam mashin is by because of, and this is explained in a pasuk, Ru'ata ki ani omis v'achaya ve'imi yodi matzel. God said, take a look, it is me. I give life, I give death, and you can't stop me, you can't save yourself from me. And we say, it's a pasuk, who can tell God what to do? Okay, now we're on page Gimel, and we're coming to critical information here, critical understanding of the Ramchal of why this yichud is so important. Klal Yisrael exists under the concept of yichud. And now he's going to explain. You need to know that the understanding of yichud is a great foundation to our absolute true emunah. If you don't understand the yichud, the Ramchal writes in numerous places, if you don't understand the yichud, then your emunah is lacking. This is a foundational principle, if not the foundational principle of your emunah. As we will write further in the Sefer. We're on page Yud Gimel, page 13. The major purpose of understanding yichud, because once you understand yichud, the Ramchal says, there are certain primary forms of apikursis, certain primary forms of disbelief in God, in hashgacha. When you understand yichud, you will understand to reject these 5 major forms of apikursis. Mehem shenafu b'leiv ovdei avodah zarah. Some of these ideas came into the hearts of those who worship idols. Umehem b'leiv rov hamon amaretz, and some of the ideas came in to the common folk who don't know better. Mehem b'leiv goy ha'aretz. Some of these common folk that have these wrong ideas are just nations of the world. Umehem belev poshe Yisrael harishonim asher hishchisu lasos. And some of these ideas come from the original sinners. We'll soon see. He's talking about the Christians. From the original, that's certainly one of the people he's talking about. The original first poshe Yisrael asher hishchisu lasos, who they perverted their ways. Toras Aleph, the first mistake. I'm going to read them quickly for today, and then we're going to come back to see each of these. There were two types of people who worshipped idols. Hamin Harishon, the first type of idol worship, some people, the Ramban talks about this at the end he talks about in the Eira and Bo, the prominent forms of Avodah Zarah in Mitzrayim. One form of Avodah Zarah in particular it's a from Avodah Zarah. I recognize that God is so great. He created the whole world, the whole Milky Way, beyond the Milky Way. He created all of this. That's an unbelievable thing. This is such work of a genius. He's so powerful. He's so awesome. Why does he really care what happens to the ants? And that includes human beings. What are we to God? If we weren't here, as we said, it wouldn't make an impact on his existence anyways. So God is too holy. He's too big to be busy with administering this low world. He created it for whatever reason. Maybe it didn't work out the way he liked it. Maybe it did, who knows. But this is small beans. He's not interested. He's gone off and done other things. And what he left behind was statues that we build, idols, the trees, the sun, the moon, because he's off doing something else now because this is just too small. Too small. He doesn't want to deal with this. That's one form of Avodah Zarah. It's like a from Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is from. V'yesh acherim tachta, and there is a lower level of Avodah Zarah. Hem heima koichvei hashamayim uchsileim, sareim v'chol tzavon, she'em hamashgichem ba'olam, v'alkein hem midu lahem avodos, I'm turning to page Yudalit, osu lahem mizbechos, lahem yizbechu v'lahem yekateu, lahem shechmei mashpol l'toaltam. The second form of Avodah Zarah, the lower form, is that in effect, we are dealing here with new types of gods. There's the heavens, the stars, again, the sun and the moon, and they are taking care of the world. And whether that, and perhaps it's even God's will. God made them his sort of underlings to run the world. So therefore, we're going to serve these underlings because we're too distant from God to be able to serve God. This is a second form of Avodah Zarah. The first form of Avodah Zarah is God's not here anymore. He went off to do something else because this is small beans to him, not interested in what goes on here. Second form of Avodah Zarah is it's a little frummer. Yeah, maybe he's interested in what goes on here, but he created a cabinet. He created a staff to take care of things. After all, he doesn't want to take care of the day-to-day needs on every single level. So he set up, Baruch Hashem, today the Israeli government, 7-8 million people, Baruch Hashem, the country going to have 26 ministers and deputy ministers, going to have a whole cabinet here. They have ministers here to deal with things that they don't have to deal with. They made up new cabinet offices just to give out lollipops to everybody. So Rabbanu Shalom, in Avodah Zarah Form 1, he created and left. This is small beans. He's not going to deal with this. Avodah Zarah number 2, he set up a system where he didn't just leave, but there are underlings, ministers that are taking care of things for him. And therefore, it's appropriate to serve these ministers. And therefore, these people worship the stars, the moon, etc. Those are the two forms of Avodah Zarah. And that's mistake number 1, Avodah Zarah. 2 forms. Toe space, on page Yudalid. Second mistake of Apikursis. Yeshnan shtei v'shuyas, v'shus ha'poelas tov, v'shus ha'poelas ra. Hamin ha'sheni amru chas v'chalila shtei v'shuyas hein, echad poel tov, echad poel ra. Amram ein hechach b'lo hafcho, Uvioso akel yismoch shmo tachas hatov yechas v'sholom connecta mishu tachas hara. It's also from Avodah Zarah. It begins with what we learned Daas Tevunos, in Daas Tevunos. God is perfect good. God only does good. So where does bad, oppression, pain, suffering, where does it come into this world? From the perfectly good God? Chas v'sholom. Perfectly good God wouldn't do such things. There must be some other power in heaven that wreaks havoc on the creation. He wreaks havoc on mankind. And that's the power of bad. So they set up this thing called, there's the God of good, the God of bad. The Greeks had who knows how many gods, the God of darkness, the God of light. Anything, the positive things in the world have the good gods. The negative things in the world have the bad gods. And if you remember, if you ever saw Hercules when you were a kid, there was always this battle between the good gods and the bad gods. The good gods are fighting the bad gods in heaven. The bad gods are fighting the good gods, depending upon who wins, depending upon who tackles each other, depending upon who wrestles down each other on a particular issue. Good will come to the world, or Hashem, bad will come to the world. Right? That's a lot of Greek mythology. So Chas v'Shalom, these people came up with the idea that there must be two powers in the world, because the perfectly good God could not be responsible for evil. And from these two sources, bad and good, that's why we have some good things happen in the world and some bad things happen in the world. It depends which God wrestled down which God. And this is what we learn about in Sanhedrin Daf Lametes. Certain Tzeduki, Rashi says, Machashiv, said to Amemar, the Amora, that man is split into two parts. I don't want to go deeply into that Gemara. He said man is made up of two parts, or the world is made up of two parts, or the powers in the world are two parts. There are the Shadim, the people, those things that bring bad to the world, and God, who brings good things to the world. There's something called that the shade, that this Machashiv called, there's a Hormiz and there's a Hormiz. Rashi says Hormiz is somehow that the name that the Machashvim called Shadim, and Ahormiz is unfortunately the name they gave to gods. They said man, the world, God. There's a Hormiz and there's an Ahormiz, and that means God and the Shadim. And they're always battling for whether good will come to the world or bad will come to the world, chas v'sholom, to such nonsense. And this people think, especially in other religions, Christianity, you have the whole idea of Satan. Satan is arguing with God, and Satan is fighting with God, and Satan wants to do this, and God's trying to control him. Apikosis. God's not fighting with Satan. God controls whatever the Satan is. God controls him. That's the Shalit Ba'ilamoy, the Yichud. There's no other power in the world besides God. And the abracadabra guy and the Satan can't do anything without God's permission. Toos Gimel, the third mistake. Hadas Hashlishas Hidas Hamon Hanoshin. This is the third mistake, and this is also broken in two. Shechoshim shedivrei olam hazeh holchem lefi chukas tivam shibia habor betachtonim vishtadlusam v'charitzusam hu amol v'atzlusam hu amazik k'inyin kochi v'otzim yodi osli zachai lazeh. This is something we all need to be very careful of, because we all fall into this sometimes. This is the kochi v'otzim yodi osli zachai lazeh. These people are also from. Almost all apikursim are from, except they just gone off the deep end. The Avodah Zarah guy is from, he says, God's too holy to run this little place here. He left. He's too holy. So the idea of Avodah Zarah in that group of Avodah Zarah begins with, wow, God's so holy. And this form of apikursis is the kochi v'otzim yadi losses chaylaseh. Look, God created the world. There's no question about that in my mind, this person says. And God created rules of teva, quote unquote, the rules of nature. And the rules of nature. What are the rules of nature? I own a field. I plant the field. The rain comes. I cut down the field. I mill the grain. I sell it. I have parnasa. I sit back in my home and I don't plow, and I don't seed, or the rain doesn't come, or it does come and I don't cut, and I don't mill, and I don't sell, I don't have panosa. God created the world and he created rules. And in order for me to be successful or chas v'shalom a failure, it's all up to me. Now, of course, people need to plow their fields, and need to seed their fields, and they need the rain. But you need to understand that none of this works unless God wanted it to work. God could have easily said that grain will grow when there's no rain, and when there is rain, grain will not grow. We can't think of it that way because, no, it can't be. It has to be rain makes grow, and lack of rain kills. No. It doesn't have to be that way. This is what God said as rules of Teva. Plants need rain and it'll make it grow. God could have done the opposite. Any rain will kill the grain. Without rain, it'll grow beautiful. No, God could have done it that way. These are all God's rules of Teva. So even in the rules of Teva, I have to get out of my house. I have to seed. I have to wait for the rain. I have to cut. I have to mill. I have to sell. It's your hishtadlus that God blesses. God blesses your hishtadlus based upon the rules that he set up. That is not to say that has to be the rules. God can change the rules. He's not a muchach. He doesn't have to live by those rules that he set. But these people think, once God set the Teva, that's the way it has to be. We have the famous story in the Gemara in Tainis. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa ran out of olive oil on an Erev Shabbos, and they didn't know what to do. So he told his daughter, to take some vinegar and put it into the leichter. She said, vinegar? Vinegar is not a combustible item. I need oil. So Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa said to her, What do you mean? Why does oil burn? Why? Because God said oil should burn. Oil has a certain chemical combination in it, molecules, atoms, whatever you want to call it. There are certain molecules and atoms in oil that God said these atoms and these molecules can burn. But he didn't say that for vinegar. So therefore vinegar doesn't burn. But at any moment God can say vinegar can burn too. So Chanina ben Dosa said to his daughter, just put the vinegar in, and the God who said oil can burn, he can say vinegar will burn. But the vinegar burned. But there are people who believe that the rules that God set, and this is the second group that the Ramchal is talking about, these are rules set. So in other words, there's a predetermination. God set the Teva, and I can't change it. So the third group of Apikorsim have two of them. One says it's all up to me. Kochi v'otzim yadi osli es achai lazeh. It's up to my efforts. God doesn't do anything. That's all God did was set up the rules. You must plow, you must plant, you must wait for the rain, you must cut, you must mill, you must sell. He set the rules. Once those rules are set, I do it. And what I earn is because I earned it. That's one type of apikorsis in the setting. The subset, another subset in this is, it doesn't really make a difference what I do, because it's all been predetermined by God. Again, this is a from apikorsis. The first apikorsis in this category of three says, yes, God created the world. He created the rules. When I live by the rules, my successes are my successes. I did it. The second apikorsis is, God created the world with all the rules of Teva, and you can't change Teva. Therefore, if I was born to be poor, I will be poor. Rich, I will be rich. Smart, I will be smart. Dumb, I will be dumb. Understand Torah, I will. Not, I won't. I have no choices to make in life. So if we take a quick look at footnote 22 at the bottom of page Yudalit, Rav Friedlander explains category 3 of Apikorsim and the two subcategories. Shtei deos eila, footnote 22, these two ideas, shetzorfu l'kan l'dea achas, that were put together here by the Ramchal in one set called number 3. Inherently, they contradict each other. The first Apicorsis believes that man's efforts in working through the rules of Teva that God made, that's what makes him successful. God made the rules, I do the work, and my success is my success. Vahadeya Hashniya, the second subset in category 3, so Veveshakol Nigzer Alidei Hamazel. Everything's been set in stone by the mazel that you were born under. Veimaseh Odom Ma'ilam Klum. What you do will not help at all, it's all been predetermined. Ulam Hamashuta Ben Shtei Deas Elahu, the common denominator between the two subsets in category 3, Shesovim Shin One Olam Hazeh Eina Misnagim B'derech Hanhogis HaMishpat Al Pi HaMaisem HaTov Ma'oroim Shel Odom. This category 3, whether you're in subset 1 or subset 2, you believe that the world is not being run based upon reward and punishment. The world is being run either subset 1, it's based upon what I do. If I do, I succeed. If I don't succeed. This whole idea that God is rewarding and punishing has nothing to do with me, because I simply do the rules of Teva and I succeed. And the second group of Apikursim in this category simply don't believe that anything you do makes a difference, because everything's been predetermined. Okay, let's move quickly, because I want to get to number 5. Page Tesvov. Hadas Harvias Hidas Goye Ha'oretz Ha'omrim Chata Yisrael. We'll end at 4 today. This is the one I wanted to get to. Chata Yisrael. If we look at Rav Friedlander's footnote 23, he says, Zuhi Tainas Hanotzrim. This is the Taina. This is the argument of the Christians. What's the argument of the Christians? Chata Yisrael, the Jews are sinners. Ein Yeshua Salov Elokim Selach Chas v'Sholom. God can't save them anymore. As I'm saying sometimes in the Daas Tevunos here, the Christians don't believe in baseball. In baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. The Christians basically believe 2 strikes and you're out. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of sin. God gave us a second chance through the second Beis HaMikdash. That was destroyed because of sin. And 2 strikes and you're out. And at the end of the second Beis HaMikdash, according to their calculation and belief, a Jewish boy got up and said, I'm going to fix all this. Everybody come and join me. And that's when they went off. So the belief of the original Notzrim was God can't save the Jewish people anymore. We read the Tochacha yesterday in Parshas Bechukosai, Tichlishona V'Kileser, Tochel B'Chaiser. We read the Tochacha Bechukosai yesterday, which some of Farshim say alludes to the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. At the end of Chumash Devarim, we have Kisava, which is the second Tochacha, which these Mefarshim say allude to the second Beis HaMikdash. And those are the 2 Tochachas. And from there, the Christians conclude you got 2 chances and you're out. Kesef Nimos, you are silver that now is disgusting to God. Korulahem. God did choose the Jewish people, and he gave them a choice. They can either be good people serving him or evil people not serving him. And they became evil, the Jewish people. Now these words are critical. Manu mimeni yisbar kaviyachol shiyuka lehetev lem. Mano, remember, one of the ideas of Yichud is that nothing can stop and withhold God. The Christians say that God made a rule. This is the rule that they made. 2 strikes and you're out. And because it's a God-made rule, even God has to live by that rule. God can't make exceptions to his rule. And therefore, God can't help the Jewish people. Even if he wants to help the Jewish people, he can, because he said 2 strikes, you're out, and they had 2 strikes, and they're out. God can't change his own rules. Ke'inyan, as the pasuk says, Sur Yilot Chatesh. That's the next word. He was forced. God was forced to forsake them. 2 strikes, you're out. That's God's rule. God had to find a new people. And that's us. The original Christians said, God. It's impossible to save these people. So the Ramchal here is emphasizing that the original Christians believed in mono, chuchruch, and yefsha. As much as God would like to save and help the Jewish people, he can't. Because he made a rule, two strikes you're out, and God has to live by his rules. And the length of the Golus, almost 2,000 years, seems to prove them right, that we have been a forsaken people. And it puts fear in the hearts of people. If you don't have true emunah, and the Ramchal is writing this in the 1700s, we're in 2020, we're 300 years later. If you don't understand the yichud, then you could Hashem believe in this. Two strikes, you're out. And God has found a new people. It's been 2,000 years. The little problem that the Christians have, and we'll pick up on that tomorrow, the Ramchal didn't live to see this. But the big problem, the very big problem, which they call a little problem, is the creation of Bedinas Yisrael in 1948, which they have no theological answer to. If the Jews are a forsaken people, and they were kicked out of Eretz Yisrael forever, the wandering Jew, the Jew in exile, he's never coming back to his homeland. How do you explain 1948 in the last 72 years? That's a great theological problem for them. And that's why for many, many years, the Vatican, Yamach Shemam, the Vatican refused, quote unquote, to recognize the state of Israel. The Vatican, this little thing that's surrounded by a wall, considers it a separate country from Italy. And therefore, they send ambassadors all over the world. The Vatican ambassador to America, the American ambassador to the Vatican. Wow, wow, wow. And for years and years, the Vatican did not send an ambassador to Israel because if they don't send an ambassador to Israel, Israel, of course, doesn't exist because the Vatican didn't send an ambassador here. But they couldn't explain this theological problem. Jews did come home successfully, Baruch Hashem, and they're growing and getting stronger. And how do you explain this? So this was the fourth form of apikursis of Goyim. And this apikursis is based upon mukhrach. Remember, we use the word mukhrach two ways. Mukhrach is yes, that's a good thing, meaning that God is a mukhrach. He's absolute. He has no on-off switch. He's the only existence that's absolute. Nothing will change that. He will always be here and always was here. In that sense, he's a mukhrach. His existence is mukhrach. But his conduct is not mukhrach. He can do whatever he wants. Now you're going to tell me that there's a rule. 2 strikes, you're out. Even if there's a rule, 2 strikes, you're out. So what? I'll give you an example. God made a rule when he created the world. The rules of Teva. He made a rule that water has to flow, and water flows. That's the rule of Teva. God decided when the Jews needed to cross the Yam Suf that the Yam Suf would split. How can God break the rule of Teva? Every time that God does a miracle, he's breaking a rule of Teva. In the case of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, when Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa said, I want the same way that God said oil can light, vinegar can light. What did God do? He changed the Teva. Vinegar does not, as a rule of nature and as a rule of chemistry, does not light. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa said God can do it, and God did it. The rules that God created in Teva doesn't mean that he can't change them. He can change any rule he wants. He created the rules. He can make the rules. He can make exceptions to the rules. So the same way that the flowing water can stop flowing when God wants it to, God is not a mukhrach. He doesn't have to live by any rules. He created a set of rules for the normal, common, usual pattern of events. But when an event comes up where God says, I want an exception to the rule here, I want the vinegar to light, I want the water to stop flowing, God can do that. He's not a mukhrach. His existence is mukhrach. His conduct is not mukhrach. He has to exist, but he doesn't have to do anything. Therefore, this whole Christian theology that 2 strikes you out, and therefore God found a new person, and he's starting a whole new nation because God can't live by anything but these rules, is a form of apikursis. But Again, if you understand the yichud, that God's the sole ruler over every event and his existence is absolute, but his conduct is in his discretion, God can decide to forgive the Jewish people after 2 times and after 3 times. Ramchal will talk about that more tomorrow, about God's ability to forgive Klal Yisrael. So this is the foundational emunah that you have to have of the yichud. God is a shalit. He controls everything. He controls all the rules. He controls the exceptions to the rules. Now, tomorrow we'll read the 5th form of apikursis, and we'll go a little more then go back and see each of the 4 ones. As in fact, in the Machon Ramchal print, I'll send it out, there's a chart of the 5 forms of apikursis and how each apikursis is answered by yichud. B'lineda will get to that. Everybody have a wonderful day. Those yid that need a refuah shalema should have a refuah shalema. Those yid that need nechamas, the Rebbeinu Shalom should send them a nechama. Those yid that need yeshuas, the Rebbeinu Shalom should send them yeshuas. Yeshuas, nechamas, refuahs only come from the Rebbeinu Shalom because he's the yichud, the only one that can do it. The Rebbeinu Shalom should keep us safe and healthy. And again, as I always say, no matter what the government does and no matter how much they open things up, you need to be careful and watch yourselves. It doesn't mean that things are open, you need to jump out and do it. It means you have to think twice. And someone told me last week that Bedafka, last week, knowing that the government was going to open everything up within a couple of days, an older couple went out last week and did a major shopping because last week they felt there's more safe than this week. Because when they thought about it, last week people were still sort of not roaming around everywhere in a free-for-all. So they felt more comfortable going out last week and doing a major shopping. This week it's going to, and as the time goes on, hopefully it's a refuah shalema l'chol, and this thing is gone. But you have to be careful because this week the beaches are going to open, the schools are open, people are traveling back and forth, and the Rebbeinu Shalom has to really, really, really be a Shema Yisrael here when things open up in that way. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch Klal Yisrael, should watch Allah Good to mention the world. Everybody have a wonderful day. Zay Gesund. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Rabbi Sai, we're in the middle of building a Mizbeach. We're not just learning about the Mizbeach. We're mamish building a Mizbeach, and we're going to understand it. And Mi'at Hashem, the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to complete our work for us with actually giving us that Mizbeach. Everybody have a wonderful day. Zay Gesund.